I smoothed the silk of my blouse, my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window just barely showing the edge of my patience. The city lights stretched below me like a scattering of stars I could almost touch. My phone buzzed against the marble countertop, and I picked it up with a polite sigh, already knowing whose name would make me flinch. Happy Thanksgiving. The text read, curt and casual, just 3 words. From my dad.
Dad.
The same man who, years ago, had stood at the head of the table and announced I wasn't family anymore. Funny how 3 words could feel like a punch and a challenge all at once. I let the message sit for a moment, tracing the smooth edge of the phone, feeling the warmth of the screen against my fingers. My life now felt like a perfectly framed photograph. My corner office, the faint hum of the city, the faint scent of coffee I'd brewed hours ago. No one knew the sleepless nights, the doubts, the sting of that long-ago dinner. And I intended to keep it that way, at least until today. Something about the message made the old wounds flare, a reminder that some ghosts never fully disappear. But there was also a thrill, a quiet pulse of anticipation. Maybe it was time to finally show them just how far not family could take a girl. I remember that Thanksgiving like it was yesterday, even though my memory still tastes bitter. The smell of roasted turkey and sweet potatoes filled the room, masking the tension that crackled under the polished tablecloth. I was 17, dressed in a sweater my mom had knitted, nervously twisting the edge of my napkin as my dad cleared his throat. My vote is unanimous, he said, standing up so abruptly that the chair scraped against the hardwood. Sophie, you're not family anymore. The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt my chest tighten, my throat constricting, and my hands trembled so violently that the napkin slipped from my fingers. Everyone around the table froze, eyes wide, mouths half open in stunned silence. My stepmom, glossy hair, perfect posture, a smile that didn't reach her eyes, looked at me like I had just confessed some unforgivable crime. Why? I whispered, barely audible. My voice cracked under the weight of years of trying to be good enough. You've been selfish, manipulative, and we all agree, she said, calm as a judge reading a sentence. My father nodded, avoiding my eyes. I sank back into the chair, the fabric of my sweater bunching under my knuckles. I felt small, invisible, abandoned by the people who were supposed to protect me. Tears blurred my vision, but I refused to let them fall. Pride, stubborn pride, won that day. Later, my grandmother found me sitting on the back porch, the chill in the air matching the cold ache in my chest. She handed me a small, leather-bound notebook, her fingers rough but steady. Sophie, she said, keep this. Fill it with your dreams. Your worth isn't measured by anyone at that table. I clutched it like a lifeline, her words embedding themselves in my heart. That night, after the family left, I packed a single suitcase with essentials and my notebook. I walked out into the night, not knowing what I would become, only that I would never let anyone decide my value again. The streets were quiet that night as I pulled my suitcase along the uneven sidewalk, the cool wind brushing against my face like a promise. I had nothing but a few dollars, my grandmother's notebook, and a determination so fierce it made my chest ache. I didn't know where I would end up, but I knew I couldn't go back. Not to that house, not to that table, not to the people who had told me I didn't belong. I found a tiny apartment above a bakery downtown. The smell of fresh bread and cinnamon greeted me every morning, a reminder that life had small comforts even when it felt like everything had been stripped away. I started taking temp jobs, assistant, receptionist, cafe barista, anything that paid rent. Nights were long, often spent in the dim light of my notebook, scribbling down ideas, plans, and dreams. My grandmother's words echoed in my mind. Your worth isn't measured by anyone at that table. It wasn't easy. Some mornings, I would stare at my reflection in the grimy mirror of my apartment and wonder if I would ever rise above the weight of their rejection. I questioned my talent, my strength, my right to exist outside their version of family. But I kept moving forward. Then I met Claire Donovan, a seasoned entrepreneur with a sharp eye and an even sharper mind. She saw me fumbling through a freelance marketing pitch, noticed my ideas even when I tried to downplay them. "You've got something," she said, handing me a coffee with a smile. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Not even your family." Under Claire's mentorship, I learned fast branding, finance, negotiation. I made mistakes, embarrassing ones, but each misstep was a lesson. Slowly, clients came, one by one. The first big contract felt like a secret victory. I held the check in my hands and thought of that Thanksgiving table, the words that had tried to break me. I didn't broadcast my success. I kept my social media minimal, avoided calls home, and built my empire quietly. My loft office, the curated art on the walls, the financial statements that made my heart skip a beat, they were mine. Every achievement was a step away from the girl who had been told she wasn't family, a quiet rebellion against the doubt and dismissal that had once defined me. Years passed, and Sophie Hamilton became a name whispered in the right circles: smart, capable, unstoppable. But only I knew the full story. The nights of tears, the cold apartments, the relentless hustle. And soon, Thanksgiving would come again. But this time, the table would not define me. I would. Thanksgiving arrived, and for the first time in years, I walked into a room I had once dreaded, not as a scared, trembling girl, but as a woman who had built her world on her own terms. My family's mansion smelled of roasted turkey, sage, and the faint floral perfume my stepmom always wore. The table was set immaculately, crystals sparkling, silverware polished to a mirror shine. They expected a timid, apologetic Sophie. Instead, they found me in a tailored navy suit, heels clicking softly against the marble floor, my hair perfectly coiffed, and a calm smile that didn't hide the fire underneath. I could see it in their eyes immediately. Disbelief, curiosity, that familiar flicker of judgment, now mixed with unease. "Hi," I said, my voice steady, almost melodic. "Happy Thanksgiving." My father's jaw tightened. My stepmom's smile faltered. My younger brother, who used to avoid me, stared like I'd grown into someone entirely foreign. They had come expecting the Sophie they thought they knew, the girl they had dismissed. Instead, they were confronted with a woman who had survived, thrived, and flourished without their approval. I gestured toward the living room. "Shall we talk?" They followed cautiously. The walls were lined with photographs, but not the family kind. They were milestones, awards, press features, snapshots of Sophie Hamilton in moments of triumph. The office in the corner wasn't cluttered. It was curated, every detail a reflection of the life I had built. I let them take it in. The expensive art, the books on leadership and finance, the shelves of awards, they didn't know where to look first. I waited, letting silence stretch just long enough to make them uncomfortable, to make them notice the quiet confidence I carried. Finally, I spoke. "I've spent the last 10 years building a life where my worth isn't defined by anyone's vote at a dinner table." I pulled out my phone and projected the headlines, contracts, and financial statements onto the wall, proof of ownership, proof of success. My net worth, my business holdings, my name in places they had never imagined. Their reactions were immediate. My stepmom's hand flew to her mouth, my father's eyes widened in disbelief, and my brother simply shook his head, as if trying to process the impossibility. You built this?" my father stammered. "All on your own?" I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile. "Every late night, every challenge, every doubt you threw my way, I turned it into fuel. I didn't need your approval. I didn't need your vote. And now, here I am." For a moment, there was silence. Then I let the weight of my words settle. This was no longer the dinner table of humiliation. It was the stage where I reclaimed my story. Every detail, every success, every choice was mine. They weren't prepared for the truth, and they didn't know how to respond to a Sophie Hamilton who didn't ask for forgiveness or seek validation. I looked around the room, watching their eyes dart from the projected figures to me, searching for the girl they thought they knew. That girl no longer existed. I had stepped out of her shadow years ago, and now the power rested squarely with me. "I've listened to the words you spoke at that table," I began, my voice calm but firm, "and I've spent years learning that your opinion doesn't define me. But if any of you want to be part of my life moving forward, there are conditions. My father cleared his throat, hesitant. Conditions? Yes, I said, letting the words settle in. I will not tolerate judgment, manipulation, or emotional abuse. If you want a relationship with me, you must approach it with honesty, respect, and accountability. I turned to my stepmom. You will stop undermining others to elevate yourself. Any future interactions must be free from competition or comparisons. Compassion is not optional, it's required. My brother shifted uncomfortably, and I softened slightly, addressing him. You have potential, and I want to see you grow into the person you can be. But you need to leave behind bitterness and the habit of siding with cruelty. Support isn't weakness, it's a strength you'll need. I paused, letting my words sink in. The room was heavy with the weight of realization. They could choose to leave or rise to meet the standard. The power dynamic had shifted, and I wasn't going to allow old patterns to repeat. Each of you has a chance to rebuild. I continued, my tone blending compassion and steel. I've built this life from nothing, and I am willing to share knowledge, guidance, and opportunities, but only if you commit to growth. No excuses. No exceptions. Respect my boundaries, pursue your dreams honestly, and leave behind the toxic behaviors that cost us years. I saw flashes of shame, guilt, and relief. My father's shoulders slumped, my stepmom's eyes softened, though pride still lingered. My brother nodded slowly, understanding the stakes. I ended with a smile that was both gentle and commanding. I'm not asking for blind loyalty. I'm offering a chance to be part of something real, meaningful, and grounded in truth. Your vote didn't define me, and your silence or rejection never will. But your choices now will define how, or if, we move forward together. For the first time, I felt a quiet, profound satisfaction. I wasn't just revealing my success. I was reclaiming the narrative, creating a space where boundaries were respected and empowerment was non-negotiable. They could choose to rise, or they could remain in the past. The power was mine, and for the first time in a long time, it felt exhilarating. Thanksgiving ended differently that year. The tension that usually hung like a thick fog over the house had lifted, replaced by a cautious but genuine curiosity. My family began to move slowly toward the standards I had set, not because I demanded it, but because they had glimpsed the life I had built and realized the cost of their past actions. My father started listening more than he spoke. I noticed him helping my younger brother with small tasks, patient for the first time in years. My stepmom, though still guarded, made an effort to check in, not to control, but to understand. And my brother, he laughed more freely, no longer weighed down by the resentment that had kept him quiet. Change was gradual, imperfect, but it was real. I sat in my office that night, the city lights spilling across the floor like liquid gold, and held the leather-bound notebook my grandmother had given me years ago. Flipping through the pages, I traced the scrawled dreams, the doubts, the small victories that had fueled this journey. She had been right. My worth had never been defined by a dinner table vote, a dismissive word, or anyone's approval. It had been measured in resilience, courage, and the relentless pursuit of my own life. A soft smile tugged at my lips as I realized how far I had come. The girl who had left that table all those years ago was gone, replaced by a woman who owned her story, her success, and her boundaries. The past was no longer a chain, it was the foundation. I placed the notebook carefully on my desk, a symbol of both memory and triumph. I had learned to protect my heart while embracing the possibility of reconciliation on my terms. Some wounds remain, yes, but they are reminders of strength rather than weakness. And as I looked out at the sparkling skyline, I whispered to myself, a final, quiet affirmation. I am family of my own making. The words carried a weight, a victory, a liberation that no vote could ever take away. In that moment, I understood something profound. Strength, independence, and grace are not given. They are earned, nurtured, and fiercely protected. And I had done it on my own terms.